Another edition of PxPCast, the podcast about play-by-play broadcasters for play-by-play broadcasters, hosted by a play-by-play broadcaster, a professional development podcast that dives into the tips, tricks, experience, stories, process, and preparations of some of the biggest and best names in the business. My name is Joel Godette from the University of Miami. Today, our guest is Joe Zagacki. Joe, thanks for taking the time.
Joel, appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
I want to dig back in your career to start things off here today. And go before you were the play-by-play voice of the Miami Hurricanes. And I'm curious how being the color analyst for the Miami Hurricanes informed what you do now and how it helped make you better.
Yeah, all of it, everything that I did before being the play-by-play voice helped me now. But when I was coming up, I think broadcasting was a little bit different because radio stations kind of use their own radio team. And it was a way and an avenue to promote, your talk show or whatever your other programming was. Often you paired guys at your station together. When I first started, the Miami Dolphins, their broadcast team was a guy named Rick Weaver, and his analyst was Larry King. So it wasn't unusual, I don't think, to have a radio person be the analyst. But what it did for me is it just taught me so much about preparation. I'm not a former player, so not being a former player, you got to be able to learn how to prepare, communicate, talk to coaches. You have to be able to speak in English, right? In terms of not the football Swahili, which you often hear now. And so it helped me prepare that way, got me organized. Got me around coaches and players, and taught me a different way to watch the game. Now, as a play-by-play guy, you're always watching the ball. As an analyst, you're just watching the ball, watching the game in a different way. So it taught me a ton of different things to get ready for play-by-play.
I had seen an interview where you said at the beginning you visited with every coach and you got a master's in football. And then you spent a lot of time on Tuesdays and Wednesdays in the coaches' offices. And I think back to when I started at Ball State, and Pete Lembo's staff was awesome about, like, they didn't know who I was, but they were like, sure, sit in the back of the meeting room. Figure things out if you can. You're fine with the osmosis. We don't have any secrets. And that was amazing for me because I learned I learned what the team was doing just by watching in a way that I never had thought about. What did you do when you were around those coaches and in their offices on Tuesdays and Wednesdays that helped put you in the best position possible?
Well, when I started, Jimmy Johnson was the head coach. Dave Wannstedt was the defensive coordinator. Gary Stevens was the offensive coordinator. You got some really smart guys. Dave Campo was in charge of the Miami Hurricanes secondary. Butch Davis was the defensive line coach. So, I mean, you talk about just a wealth of information. And I do the same thing today. As a matter of fact, to get ready for a broadcast, as I did then. I've got a spring game coming up. I'm looking over here to my left because I've got a yellow legal pad. But I would take my yellow legal pad into the office and I would sit there. And I would just ask them questions. I'd ask Coach Stevens, okay, what's the strength of the Michigan defense? Who's their best player? What do you want to do on first down? What are you going to be thinking about on third down and 3 to 5? What are you thinking about on 3rd and 7 or more? Just go through every situation, and did that with all the coaches. Dave Wannstedt, it would be the other way. What makes their quarterback special? What can you do to their quarterback? What are they thinking about on first down? Well, what's their third down package look like? What's your third down package going to be? More pressure, less pressure, no pressure. So I just did it every single Tuesday and Wednesday. I did it for University of Miami, and then I did it for the Dolphins because I did their pregame and postgame. So then I would go up to the Dolphins camp and do the same thing. But coincidentally, their defensive coordinator at the time was Tom Olividati, who was the defensive coordinator at the University of Miami in 1983. So some of the connections kind of helped me. And then when Jimmy Johnson moved on to the Cowboys, Dennis Erickson came in and he gave me great access. So then it was Bob Redkowski and Sonny Lubick. Tommy Tuberville was on the staff. Ed Ogeron was on the staff. And I just had great access. I do the same now for the most part. I go in and see whoever the coaches are. I don't use it quite the same way as the play-by-play guy. I don't use that information quite the same way, but I incorporate it. Basketball, when I first started doing basketball with University of Miami, again, I was an analyst. Seth Greenberg was an assistant coach. He was one of the first assistant coaches at the University of Miami. So he introduced me to scouting reports. Then along came Leonard Hamilton. Stan Jones was his assistant coach. So I just continued that same path of getting scouting reports. Now with Coach Larinaga, I get the scouting report from him and spend a bunch of time with him. For baseball, I did baseball. I would take my legal pad. I sit down with the assistant coach. Let's see, Ron Frazier was the head baseball coach. Brad Kelly was the assistant. That went from Ron Frazier to Jim Morse, and it was the same thing, game after game. Yellow legal pad. All right, let's go through their lineup. If I could pick up this iPad and walk it into my garage, I have about 30 years of legal pads in my garage with scouting reports and game notes. I still do it today. I still think it's the best way to do it. Sometimes I ask myself, "What, are you crazy? Just memorize all the names." But I still get all the scouting reports for all three sports.
Do you ever go back and look at all those old legal pads?
I did about 3 days ago. I was looking for something in my garage, and I actually pulled out 1991 Miami and Florida State. I was actually pretty impressed, to be quite honest with you. Like, damn, this is pretty good.
Who was on that?
In the game,
Yeah.
1991 was wide right one. Miami FSU. Dennis Erickson was the head coach. Casey Weldon was their quarterback. Miami's quarterback was Gino Torretta. I had a whole bunch of stuff in there. It was pretty interesting to read, actually.
How is that information best employed now in the play-by-play role? And is some of it just like a good comfort? Like I feel like some of it is, even if I'm not going to use this on the air, I feel like I'm well equipped to talk about anything with this prep and this information.
I feel like for me, it's good prep. It helps me get through every situation. But I also think that if you find the right spot, it's still all about storytelling and trying to inform the audience. Now, there is so much information out there today, and so many people, and so many fans have their own forum. Yeah, I mean, you got to come out. Now I think the challenge is what's different by the time you get to game day. But I still think I can come up with different stuff because of the access of getting to the coaches. And so I use it and just try to weave it into the storytelling of who this player is or what the team is trying to accomplish. And I think, every now and then I'll drop in there. It's 3rd down and 7. And I can kind of lead my analysts into, well, Mac Brown or Carolina, they really like to do X, Y, and Z. I know a couple of years ago, it seemed to me Carolina just always beat us down the left sideline on go routes early in the game. And I turned to my analyst and said, if I'm DJ Ivy, I'm thinking, here comes a go route. Sure enough, they threw one for 75 yards. So I just try to weave it into the broadcast. Same with basketball. I can use it in basketball when a guy gets to the free throw line or they're dribbling up the floor, the point guard, he likes to go left all the time. I just find different ways to use it. I think it's good. I hope it's good. I hope people find it, just it's good background information on players. I think it helps tell the story.
This may get too in the weeds, but maybe not. Having been an analyst for all the years that you were, do you look at your partner now in a certain way, knowing like I had to do that role. Here's what I liked about what my partner did for me when I was in that chair. So here's how I can best set that person up for success now in the
Oh
job that
yeah,
you have.
oh yeah, without question. Because I know what my job is. So and now I've been with my analyst Don Bailey for a long time, so I know how much room he needs, and I know how to, if he's going to go a little bit longer, I'll be more accepting of that than perhaps my predecessors would have been if I was doing that. They were really strict about being done as soon as the huddle was over. Well, we don't have huddles anymore, so you know, and the game is different. There's all these hurry up offenses, so the timing, I think, in play by play and analyzing is a little bit different. Uh, but I know how to give him room, and I would rather give him the room to say what he wants to say and get through it without stumbling, and then just leave it to me to figure out the rest.
How much else has the role of the radio team evolved since the days of Larry King being a color
Yeah,
analyst?
yeah. Well, it's just to kind of follow up also on how did the analyst role help me. I did them all. I did sidelines. I did pregame. I did board hopping. So all of that stuff has has helped me. And so I know what everybody on my team is thinking. I know what the board op is thinking. I know what the statistician is thinking. I got a pretty good feel for what the sideline guy is thinking. I did all those jobs. So I think it helps me with my composure and poise, and helps me create the broadcast that I want to have.
And a empathy for what everybody else has to do on game day too, and understanding what everybody else's contribution is, which I think is really important as well. Uh,
Yeah, no question. I mean, everybody's got a job to do. Um, and so I think if your play-by-play guy knows what all those jobs are, you can bring it all together, and hopefully, it makes it a more seamless broadcast. And we try to create fun for the listeners. We have some unique things that go on in our broadcast, and it goes on because I understand what the talk show guys are trying to accomplish with their show to tie into our broadcast. So I think that all helps. And then kind of go back to your point about how has it changed with radio teams. Um, I think it's changed probably a lot, because although maybe not, it's changed a lot in this way. Um, More former players are doing those jobs. More former players are doing studio jobs. More former players are doing talk shows. And hopefully, because they are entering our world, they're starting to, I think, if you're going to be in our world, then you got to go all in and understand what you know we we live by the things that they live by, right? The discipline of their job in football or baseball, and the fundamentals that a former player had, a former basketball player, former baseball player, former football player. They all had fundamentals. Well, we have fundamentals, so hopefully they understand that and will learn it.
why do you do this? What got you into it? What gets you up every day?
That's funny. I probably, like every other kid out there, um, listened to baseball games on the radio when I was my dad and I would listen to games on the radio. We were Philadelphia Philly fans, or my dad was, and he's from Philadelphia. We lived in Miami, and my dad had this big old gigantic radio, and he would take that knob and twist it and turn it just perfectly to get WCAU radio from Philadelphia. He just t- twist it and turn it, and we'd listen to the games, and I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. And he would listen to University of Miami football games on Friday night to the guy that I eventually worked with, Sonny Hirsch. And I don't know, 8 years old, 7 years old. And I just had this in my head. And I would go out in our front yard and I would take a football and I would throw it to myself, and I would start doing the play-by-play. I was 8 years old. I had a wall, a side wall, and I would take a tennis ball, and I can remember on Sunday afternoons, uh, again in Miami, we didn't have baseball team, so they had radio station would broadcast other games. They would broadcast the Baltimore Orioles, and it was Chuck Thompson and Bill O'Donnell. And for some reason, one station had the Chicago White Sox, and it was a guy named Gene Nelson. Well, those guys were great play-by-play guys. I didn't know it then, but it must have just somehow sunk into my brain somewhere. So I'm throwing this tennis ball against the wall, practicing my own skills of being a second baseman, imagining I'm doing games. I would have the game on the radio someplace in the yard. So then I would start doing the games, broadcasting and making up lineups and all that stuff, and making up games. That's how I got into it, or why I wanted to get into it. It's the only thing I wanted to do, and it's the only thing I've ever done. So what keeps me going now? Now I'm much older. I'm 62 years old, and what gets me going all the time is I still love trying to craft these damn images and thinking of. I think it's a hard thing to do, and some guys are blessed. Some guys have just got God-given talent, the greatest voices and great vocabulary. They're just blessed. I don't fall into that category. I fall into the category of you got to work every day and just work the craft and think about it every day. And so that just keeps me going because I think it's fun. I think it's a great challenge. And I really enjoy trying to figure out new ways to do it. And one of the blessings I had, by the way, when I was doing University of Miami football as the analyst, they were really good. Those were the glory years, right? So all the games are on national TV. And so I would came across guys like Jim Nance, Brent Musburger, and developed lifetime friendships with some of these guys. And the analysts were Dick Vermeil, it seemed like every game, and Pat Hayden. And Pat Hayden once told me, and he's a Rhodes Scholar. Remember, Pat Hayden was a Rhodes Scholar. He did the games on CBS before he went off and became the athletic director. He once said, one of the things about this job is you got to find a way to say the same thing all the time differently. So you need a great vocabulary. So whatever you read, and read a lot, start incorporating that into your broadcast. So that's what I've been doing. Whatever I read, I get this, I make a note of it. I'll read some spy novel and it'll be a description of a cold, icy day of somebody walking across, the sidewalk to get into their car. So suddenly that turns into when the University of Miami left the hotel this evening for tonight's encounter with Syracuse. They walked across the icy parking lot with their parkas on and gently got onto the bus on their way to, well, it's not the Carrier Dome anymore, but on their way to the Carrier Dome.
How much do you read? Like how much a part of that regular routine is that part of your regular routine for you?
Every day, every night, whatever it is. Everybody's going to read the newspaper or whatever version we have of newspapers today, right? So funny thing is, I used to get all the newspapers delivered to my house, and now you can't get the damn paper delivered.
You can barely get the paper.
yeah, you can't get a paper. So I'm a digital person. I read the paper on my iPad in the morning, but I still like reading the newspaper. That being said, no, I read my whole family, my wife, my mother, my daughter. We probably have like our own book club. So I just read every night before I go to bed or on the airplane. I look around, you travel a lot. I find it a great time to read. Everybody else is watching some Netflix show. I just find some stories to escape in. And it's long. These are long seasons. I do primarily football and basketball, college baseball as well. But it comes out to like 80 games, 85 games. That's a lot of games, I think. from September until uh, Memorial Day. So that's a pretty good grind. So you got to find some escape avenue. So for me, it's reading some kind of spy novel or something like that, some mystery thriller, and then a hijack, all the great things that the David Baldacci has written and then incorporating into my broadcast.
My bookshelves are around the corner, but that's the same genre. I've got like 6
Yeah.
David Baldacci's lined up. Um, you'll have a lot of time to read on the flight to Stanford and Cal now, so that'll be good.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Not quite sure of how I feel about that.
Do you write things down? Will you come across a turn of phrase and be like, oh, I want to like, how
Yeah,
do you
well,
file away
you
things?
have to rate. Yeah, I'll rate. I mean, I won't rate into my broadcast notes, but like I'll create my own dictionary, I guess you would call it. Put it someplace, all right? On my yellow legal pads during my trial, I'll write some notes down, like, oh, I like that, or I might hear what someone else says and think, hey, that's a pretty good way to describe it. I never thought of it that way. So I think you got to be open minded and just. I think that's kind of the fun part is what's another way to describe somebody dropping back to pass or going to the free throw line. And you got to describe them. And I do think one of the things about if you read a lot, and I think this is hard to do, and maybe this is overdoing it. So I think there's a fine line, but I do think this is fun. Is if you read a lot, um, these guys, these great writers, they find a way to bring characters alive, right? They describe the characters. He's 6'5" and looks like he dragged tires across the parking lot at lunchtime every single day. Or, he's got beads of sweat on his forehead with untamed, unruly hair. And they describe characters. And I always thought to myself, well, how, can you do that on a radio broadcast? And why not? So it doesn't always work because stuff goes fast, but sometimes it does.
Um, building off of that, is that one of the reasons that I feel like we live in an era now where everybody wants to do television, and everybody wants to do live streams and things of that nature. But is there something to that end that you still love about radio?
Yeah, I think I like radio more than anything. And I did um, a lot of TV. I anchored the CBS affiliate here because, well, I thought I needed to do something else in my career. And wasn't always, I find that most people that want to do play by play, they think it's just that it's a linear career path, right to play by play. And for me, it wasn't always that way. It was color, sidelines, studio hosting. It wasn't one direct path. It's all over the place. Uh, but my love is always radio, and I do a lot of the women's basketball games or soccer games. University of Miami baseball. It's all on TV, but I still my favorite things are all the games I do on radio for all those reasons. I think it's still a great challenge, and maybe there's now that you bring it up, maybe there's some part of me that thinks that if you make it more interesting, it's not saving radio, but people, I think, radio, I feel like it's under a little bit of attack, and yet everybody, they find a way to listen. They're listening in their cars, they're listening on their phones, and they're like, "Oh man, AM radio, it's dying." You're listening to the games, right? You might not be listening in your car, but people all the time tell me, trying to find ways to watch and listen, and there are all these apps now where you can sync the games up. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's radio is still one of the radio play by play. I still think it's one of the toughest challenges out there.
What makes good radio play by play?
Um, man, well, probably the best guys. The number one things the best guys all have really good voices and know how to use them. I think there are some guys that have a really good voice but don't know how to use it. They just rely on that big baritone and kind of cuts through everything. But I do think that there is something to capturing the big moments, the biggest moments of the game. That's you got to hit the bullseye somehow. And I think the really good guys, the really great ones that I always get drawn into, I'm like, damn, they really nailed that one. So I think it's the combination of having a great voice or a good voice, or even, and that's all subjective on who has the voice. So let's just say being able to use your voice at the right levels at the right time. And then the guys that you can, I think play by play flows. It has a way of flowing. And if you're able, and sometimes it doesn't happen in a game. Sometimes you have those games, you walk back to the car going, man, I just never got into a good rhythm. No different than a quarterback or a pitcher. Like, well, I thought in the bullpen it was pretty good. You walk back to the car and go, damn, what am I doing? What was I doing there today? So I think it's about, can you get yourself into that rhythm and the flow of a game? And then when there's that crescendo, do you nail it? And there sometimes, it's out of your control. Something else happens. Maybe, I don't know, maybe the engineering wasn't right. Maybe there was some technical snafu. It could be anything. Some things happen that are out of your control, and you go, oh, well, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You're right there primed for the big moment, and then something else happens. So we'll just kind of leave it at that.
I was once calling a fumble return for a touchdown on a sack 6, basically, and somebody in the booth hit me out of excitement, and my binoculars came out of my hands, and I almost threw them out of the window of the booth. So in the moment, I'm like, here's this huge play, and oh my God. And I'm trying to recover all at the same time. You've had a chance to call a ton of really big moments and be a part of some really big moments across all 3 sports at Miami. What's it like? And like, what stands out? What do you remember about College World Series berths or a Final Four, or being there for a football national championship game? And how do you prepare yourself for those moments as a broadcaster?
Well, I think you just, you go into the game, those games always hoping for a great game and hoping for a clean game where something from the outside is not going to screw it up. Namely, and nowadays it just seems to happen all the time. Some officials call or replay, the replay kind of really, that's a whole different topic we'll get to one day. It just kind of messes everything up. I think as you're approaching the big play or when that big moment is coming, you just kind of go in your head, let's get this right. Try to slow down. Let's get this right. What could happen? When I was a kid, I played baseball. And I played all the sports, but primarily baseball. And I always thought in baseball, the great thing about baseball was you have to play the game ahead, right? So we got runners at first. I'm the second baseman, first and third. If it's hit to me, we could trying to turn a double play here. I'm going to try to turn a double play. If it's hit to right center field, oh, I'm the cutoff guy. I got to get out there, right? And so I think that maybe that helps me in play-by-play. So, okay, here comes the big moment. Let's make sure we got this covered and we get it the right way. If it's a field goal, is it down the middle? Is it going to be right or left? Which, by the way, are hard to call because it's hard to see right or left, especially in some of the way they position you. So we're going to watch this on the monitor. What are we going to do? If it's, third down for all the marbles, 25 yards for a touchdown, we got to make sure he gets into the end zone. No flags, 3 balls, 2 strikes. Okay, let's take a deep breath. Everybody's running. Where's the ball going to go? If it's a home run, and they win it, it's a walk-off. Not so much what are you going to say, but I just kind of try to run it through my head a little bit, try to get in front of the big play. Now, a lot of people will go, oh, they remember the Corey Elder play, the Duke game, which quite honestly, never in my wildest dreams did I see that coming. And it was such a demoralizing moment going into it. I probably wasn't even prepared for it. So I think it worked out sort of okay. Um, but now, after that happened, I try to be more prepared on um, what's going to happen here. Just run through every scenario that you can. And oh, by the way, that stuff happens really fast. So no matter how much you think in your head, you can get ready for ball four or line drive to right center field or a 3-pointer for the win. It all goes to hell in a handbasket. Ultimately, you just got to call it because
Um,
you just never know. Like the guy's going to shoot for three with 1 second left, and it's like for the win, yes. Oh, wait a minute, they take the ball out, and the guy's going to heave it down the floor, and it's going to bounce off the iron or something. Something always happens. So the
they're gonna
best
go
thing is,
review it and put time on the
yeah,
clock.
go
Yeah.
review it. Right, go review it. Don't take your eyes off the damn field.
Do you have one that stands out in your mind as like a favorite for you from a not necessarily a sports moment, but like a an art moment? Like I thought we as a team covered this one really well.
Um, let's see. A couple of years ago, Miami beat Virginia Tech in basketball on a half-court shot by Charlie Moore. So I think I did a pretty good job on that one because I had time to set it all up. Where we were, what the stakes are, what happens if it goes in, where he's coming from, and where he's going. So it all kind of worked out on the inbounds pass, going right to left. If he Miami's going to inbound the ball, if Charlie Moore, if they hit the shot, they're going to win it. He's at half court. He lets it fly. It's in the air, banks it in. It just kind of laid out pretty well. This year in football, we had two overtime games. I think the one with Mark Fletcher running in for a touchdown, you could almost see it coming because he just kept carrying the ball, carrying the ball. It was like, this guy's either going to score or, I mean, you can just see it coming. Um, so I thought that one went pretty good. The oddball one of the year was Georgia Tech, in football, because they won the game. We were the ones that were heartbroken. So I actually thought I called, had a decent call for it. It was their win. It's a little weird to call, right? Like, can I believe what I just saw? The Jack Bucket was like, well, if you're a Georgia Tech fan, if you believe in miracles, I just saw one. You know, um, let's see, the Cornelder, Miami and Duke was not bad. That was a crazy play. How was you going to say? The ball's going all over the place, and it's here, it's there, it's backwards, it's for. And what was different about that is it's a special teams play, and you probably know in college football they can have duplicate numbers, except on special teams. So the challenge in that one was trying to figure out we've got two number ones and two number fours. I think that both 1 and 4 touched the ball, so I think I had them right. And then in baseball, we've had a couple of walk-offs, but during my career, the biggest one, and still the biggest one, was Ohio State and Miami and Ohio State for the championship. And I remember that Rick Weaver, the guy that I worked with play-by-play, the voice of the Dolphins, he would always end the call with, and there are no flags. And he would kind of wait a second before, especially when Marino was throwing all these bombs to Clayton and Duper. He always wanted a great call on it. So he would pause and look around. Maybe he would say, and there are no flags. So I remember going, okay, before you declare that Miami's going to win the championship, make sure there are no flags. So sure enough, it's deflected, knocked down. And I think I even went 1001, 1002, 1003. That's why it was so infuriating. And I'm looking all around. Miami's going to be the back-to-back national champions. And all of a sudden, no sooner than I say it, here comes the flag. I'm like, no, this can't be right. So that was, you try to do the right thing. And then, of course, the flag comes in 3 days later.
It's a good rule of thumb, though, to always make sure you look for it. And it's a good
Yeah,
thing. I
you look
think it's a
around.
pacing thing, too, for a
Right.
broadcaster.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially because the game winner, especially in football, I mean, you're going to be excited, right? And I tend to get pretty excited. And I think that's fine. I think you have to let your personality be part of the game. So I'm more of an emotional person. And I think people, they want to hear your emotion. So usually big plays like that will take me out of my chair. I think that's what we like about sports, right? The emotion of it. Um, if you go to one shining moment, what are they showing? They're showing all the great moments, right? Well, how you're not going to be excited, then I don't know why you're in the booth.
Yeah.
So I tend to get excited because I think it's pretty exciting. It's pretty simple, and but you do have to like find a way to slow it down just to make sure that it's a touchdown or whatever it is, or even in basketball now you have a 3-pointer for the win at the buzzer, but nope. We're gonna go review that one too.
The last thing I've got for you, Joe, is something I like to ask a lot of people, and that's when you go into a broadcast, is there something that you need to feel ready, prepared, successful? And that doesn't necessarily have to be like game prep in advance. That could be like I've got to write these 3 things down on my board before we start. What's the one thing that you need to get you in the right place or to make you feel ready to have a good game?
Okay, so for me, it's football, basketball, baseball. All three are kind of the same. Um, Baseball a little bit less because it's lineup cards. So let's make it football and basketball. Football and basketball, you can have everything set to go before kickoff or tip off. Baseball, you kind of got to wait for the lineups. So for me, in those, for me, it is the charts that I work on with football and basketball. So we have a spring game coming up. So I got a shortened version of my chart, right? See, not that big a deal. Some guys have really big ones, big charts. So, but for me, basketball, the same thing. It's all of my information, and I want it all done before the game. I want to memorize as much of it as I can. So for me, it's too. And I kind of learned this from Coach Larinaga. I think this is pretty good. I want my chart done. I want all my work done. I want it off my plate before the game, like 24 hours before. And then, game day, I'll go back. I want to get a good night's sleep. And I want to go to bed the night before the game, visualizing the game and how I might call it. I just want to close my eyes and see the game and then kind of think about how I might call Miami's touchdown or a late, by that time, I think I'm going to have a pretty good idea of how the game is going to go. So for me, it is, I just want my work completed, and then I want to visualize it and wake up the day of the game feeling like I've already seen the game.
That puts you in a good mental place. Yeah, when I'm mentally scattered, it never goes well. So it's always good
Now,
to.
I don't want to go to the game like, scribbling notes in the last minute. I mean, that's always going to be the case where, somebody's scratched or somebody's changed the number. I mean, you have that kind of flexibility. But I'm just saying, overall, I want to consume all my information. And basketball comes much quicker. And then the day before the game, even if it's maybe in basketball, if it's a night game or football night game, maybe I'll close my eyes for 20 minutes during the afternoon. And I just want to kind of see the game and also hear the game.
Joe, if people want to find you on the radio or find you on social media, how do they track you down?
Well, I'm on Twitter, or is it X now? And it's at Kings.
Twitter.com takes you there, so it's still Twitter.
So I am not a huge social media. I haven't mastered that very well. I probably should do better. Put me in the lazy category. I should do it better, embrace it more. But at Kane's Voice on social media, and then our games are WQAM AM 560 in Miami, or we are owned and operated by Odyssey. So the Odyssey app, Odyssey.com, the Odyssey app, and you can find us that way. And even on Sirius has all of our games. So it's funny. the games nowadays aren't local anymore. They're all national games. You can get them anywhere.
Yep. Every game in your car all the time.
Yeah.
Joe, I appreciate the time. Thank you for doing this.
Okay, Joel. Appreciate it. Thank you.